Let's start this video with a question. What is in your opinion the most influential race car? A car that made an impact on the motorsport world due to its ingenuity, dominance or trend-setting technological advancements. I recently asked this to my subscribers and I got a lot of good examples. There was the Audi Quattro that showed the rally world four-wheel drive was the way to go, and the Maserati MC12 GT1, a barely legal rocket ship that forced the FIA to lay the foundations of the balance of performance principle. These two dominant cars, and many others, have found their way into the history books and are all cornerstones in the wider motorsport world. But when it comes to me personally, I think the car that had the biggest impact on motorsport was this specific Renault 5. Why? Time to find out. We begin in the late 70s when the near bankrupt American Motors Company, or AMC, was bailed out by Renault. The French brand had been desperately trying to get a foothold in the US market with its compact and economical Renault 5. The 1973 oil crisis had changed the way the US looked at cars, as big massive land yachts and high-power muscle cars made way for smaller, economic and fuel-efficient cars. Downsizing was all the rage, but somehow the US market never really embraced the little Renault 5. So when Renault bought a significant share in AMC, they saw it as the perfect opportunity to try again and go all out. Renault had already given the 5 a new name and would advert and sell them at all of the 1300 AMC dealerships they got access to thanks to the merger. AMC's marketing department came in handy too, as it produced several commercials for the now redubbed Renault Le Car. In all promotional material that followed, Renault was very keen on mentioning the immense sale numbers of the car back in Europe, but to get the most attention they made sure to mention the Renault 5's European motorsport pedigree. In the US too, the car had already proven to be very successful in the Sports Car Club of America showroom stock racing series. But Renault, and more importantly Patrick Jacquemart, wanted more. Jacquemart was the head of Renault's racing division and decided to promote a little Renault to the GTU class of the IMSA racing series. Being somewhat in the shadow of the high horsepower war zone that was GTO, GTU class was limited to cars with an engine size under 2.5 liters. But the Renault was only a 1.4 liter front-wheel drive hatchback that barely had 50 horsepower. Turning it into a Mazda RX-7 rivaling race car would be impossible, so they didn't even try. Instead, Jacquemart profited of the European branch of Renault and imported 3 brand new Renault 5 turbos. The turbo was a pure homologation special and shared little with the American Le Car. It was a turbocharged mid-engine pocket rocket originally conceived for Group 4 rallying. While the original 1980 rally version was making up to 180 horsepower, Jacquemart had to make do with 160, as the cars he brought over were standard road cars and not factory-prepared rally cars. That wouldn't be a problem though, as he and his team set out to turn it into a circuit weapon themselves. The chassis would see extensive work and now featured fully adjustable suspension, but the most impressive change was found in the engine bay. That was thanks to the American K-Tech company, who bumped up the power from 160 to 260 horsepower, which made the IMSA GTU Renault 5 Turbo the fastest Renault of them all. It made its competition debut in April 1981 at Road Atlanta, where it immediately finished on the podium, a feat it would only repeat once more at Laguna Seca a month later, while at every other race event the car retired due to mechanical issues. Clearly more work needed to be done to make the engine last longer. It's at this point where this story takes a turn for the worse. Patrick Jacquemart, while testing the car at Mid-Ohio, slid off track and crashed into a dirt embankment head-on. Jacquemart, only 35 years old, suffered a basilar skull fracture and passed away before the paramedics even reached the hospital. It was a depressing trend that for many people just didn't make sense. Everyone knew motorsport was and still is dangerous. Drivers would have monumental accidents and walk away unharmed on one day, while on the other a seemingly innocent head-on collision would prove to be fatal. The cars were steadily getting upgraded in terms of safety, but as for the drivers, their protection was limited to shoes, gloves, a fireproof suit and a helmet, and nothing more. Jacquemart's accident was the final straw. What's the point of putting more and more safety precautions on the cars when the drivers were neglected? Something needed to be done. This is what one of Jacquemart's competitors and close friends, Jim Downing, thought as well. He quickly identified the basilar skull fracture as the main culprit. It's an injury that happens when at least one of the bones at the base of your skull breaks or fractures. Specifically in motorsport, it was caused by the driver's head snapping forward in head-on collisions. The body might have been held back by the racing harness, but the head wasn't. The added weight of the helmet only worsened this problem, as not even the strongest man and woman in the world would be able to hold their head back in a crash. Luckily for Jim, his brother-in-law was Robert Hubbard, a professor of biomechanical engineering, and rather quickly they came up with a U-shaped structure that was connected to the helmet and sat on top of the driver's shoulder. They called it the Hans device, short for head and neck support. Early testing had shown that it could reduce head movement on impact by an immense amount. It was a revolutionary invention, but at first it didn't catch on. They had a finished product by the mid-80s, but found no existing safety companies willing to sell it. So they were forced to set up their own company in 1990 to manufacture and sell the Hans device themselves. Sale numbers were disappointingly low despite interest and development help from General Motors and the McLaren Mercedes Formula One team. After Häkkinen's terrible crash at the 1995 Adelaide Grand Prix, they and Formula One started to look into the Hans device. At that point it was too bulky to fit inside the F1 cockpit, but if Häkkinen would have had one that day, he might have been able to get out the car himself. More and more drivers were starting to wear early versions of the Hans device, but more and more drivers were also criticizing it, claiming it hampered their movement, was too bulky, and just plainly looked stupid. Downing, undeterred by any of this, continued to promote the device himself at every race he attended. By 2001, the Hans device would skyrocket in popularity. The major catalyst to the Hans device adoption was the tragic passing of Dale Earnhardt. He too was one of the many drivers that refused to wear the device. Whether it would have saved him at Daytona is still up for debate, but what we do know is that Robert Hubbard's phone on that day of the accident almost overloaded with inquiries about the Hans device. Not soon after, the Hans device went from being recommended to mandatory in pretty much all major racing series, and you'd have trouble finding any racing series now that don't include the device in their rule set. Ever since its acceptance into the racing world, the Hans device has saved countless of lives. Accidents that would have been fatal back in the 80s are now almost completely harmless to the driver because of it. And that's why I think the little IMSA GTU Renault is the most influential race car of them all, as it spawned the Hans device legacy that got off to a rocky start, but is now inseparable from motorsport. It doesn't get more influential than that. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe if you don't want to miss out on the next one.